Scripture alone is our final authority. Final authority. Final authority.
Final authority.
That was the rallying cry of the Protestant Reformation. But 500 years later, Protestants are still asking, who gets to say what Scripture actually means? Hey, I'm Seminary Covey, and today we're going to be looking at The Protestant Dilemma and Biblical Authority After Babel by Kevin J. Vanhoozer, which is one Protestant's attempt to answer that very question. But in trying to solve it, Vanhoozer may have stepped right back into the very dilemma the Reformers tried to escape. The Protestant Reformers broke from the Roman Catholic Church not simply over doctrine, but over authority. They rejected the idea that the church councils or the Pope had infallible interpretive power. Sola Scriptura, or Scripture alone, became their foundation. But here's the catch. Scripture doesn't interpret itself. People interpret it. The Catholic Church had a magisterium, an official interpretive body. The Reformers rejected it, but then immediately began writing confessions, hosting synods, and drawing doctrinal boundaries. As historian Alistair McGrath notes, the Reformers denied the authority of the papacy only to create new centers of doctrinal control. So ironically, Protestantism never truly escaped the need for a magisterium. It just replaced Rome's with their own. Enter Kevin Vanhoozer. In Biblical Authority After Babel, he recognizes the problem. The Reformation did not create interpretive anarchy. The solas, rightly understood, offer a means of coherence. The issue with that statement should be apparent. What exactly counts as rightly understood? Ask 4 Protestants for the meaning of sola scriptura and you'll get 5 different answers. Trust me, I've had this conversation more times than I can count. Each time, proponents subtly shift their definitions to fit current contexts while still trying to sound historically grounded. But it just doesn't hold up. The first reformers who championed sola scriptura had a very different scriptura they were holding sola to. But I digress. Vanhoozer proposes what he calls mere Protestant Catholicity. Yeah, I said that right. Mere Protestant Catholicity. But here's the idea. Keep Scripture as a final authority, but interpret it in local churches guided by creeds, confessions, and pastors. These communities form a Protestant magisterium of the people. His argument pulls from thinkers like John Webster, who emphasized the Spirit's role in interpretation. Michael Allen and Scott Swain, advocates for a Protestant ressourcement. Even Catholic scholars like Yves Congar, though Vanhoozer parts with him on apostolic succession. But looking at Vanhoozer's model, doesn't it sound a lot like what the Great Church was already doing? He wants a Catholic way of doing theology, but without the centralized hierarchy of Rome. And here's the tension. By rejecting Rome's magisterium and building his own framework to secure authoritative interpretation, Vanhoozer is doing what the Reformers did, just one step removed. You see the cycle. Rome interprets Scripture with tradition and magisterium. Reformers reject this, claiming Scripture alone, but then form new traditions and interpretive communities. Now, Vanhoozer calls us back to Catholic structures, but Protestantized. So who decides what counts as mere Protestant authority? Scripture doesn't self-interpret. As scholar Brad Gregory puts it, the Reformation's principle of sola scriptura was the essence of the problem. It could not contain the interpretive pluralism it unleashed. Vanhoozer's system still depends on the interpreter. And without a magisterium that can say this is what the text means, you're left with, ironically, the very Babel Vanhoozer hopes to overcome. So here's the real dilemma. Protestants say Scripture is the final authority, but Scripture only says what the interpreter says it says. Vanhoozer wants to avoid chaos, but his proposal creates a soft magisterium that lacks the grounding of apostolic tradition. In the end, it's a private interpretation system seeking communal validation while still denying the need for a universal church to bind belief. And that leaves us with a haunting question. Can Protestantism ever escape the authority crisis it created without becoming the very thing it once protested? Well, if you're wrestling with these tensions, you are not alone. Whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, or somewhere in between, these questions about Scripture, tradition, and authority still shape the church today. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more theological deep dives. And let's keep asking these hard questions. Don't be afraid of them. It'll be okay. Shalom.